Hello and welcome to BusyWorksBeats.com. Today I'm going to show you how to mix a hip hop track in FL Studio from start to finish. Okay, so I exported a beat that I made in FL Studio back into waveform and brought it into FL. I'm at 86 BPM. The first thing I want to do is get rid of the master. So the first thing you want to double check is that you don't have any duplicated tracks when it comes to mixing. By default, FL comes with these current tracks that we don't need for mixing, so you could just delete that one. And we're going to delete the master unless you want that as a reference for later. We don't need the master. So what I could do is just mute it with the mute tool. And nextly, we have the mix bus, which is another basically pre-master. But because I turned all the effects off before I imported the files, they're basically the same thing. So how do you export stuff for mixing? For mixing, what you want to do is you want to export, you want to go to your mixer, make sure that every sound, like right now this says dash dash, you want to make sure that every sound is sent to your mixer. Hit Control L to do that automatically. And what you want to do though is that every track in your beat is on a channel, because when you go to export, it only exports the channels. So the stuff that isn't on a channel defaults to the master, and you don't have control over individual things if you don't separate the sounds. So what we want to do here is make sure that all the effects are off before we export. So click this little icon to turn off the effects. So now you can hear my raw voice, you know, before processing and then before limiting. So you want to do that in your beat before you export, okay? Or you could just turn off the enable insert effects when you're exporting. So that's the first thing you have to do. Do not export your beat with effects unless they're creative effects like a certain delay or a certain like chorusy sound that you need on the sound. Unless it's very specific for the sound, try to export your sounds as dry as possible. I know that was the boring part, but that's the part that a lot of people don't do, and they wonder why their beats don't sound good. Okay, so let's start quickly leveling. What I'm going to do is, again, all these audio tracks, go to the channel rack, click all if you don't see anything, or just go to audio in this case for audio files. Double click, hit Control L to send these to the mixer. So now what I'm going to do is quickly level within the mixer. Now keep in mind, I actually want to teach you guys a new way. The mixer is post effects. So this won't really do much as far as gain staging. This is post effects. What we want to actually do is go to the channel rack, or to use the clip gain in the new FL Studios here. This clip gain icon in the middle. Okay, you can go into your settings to turn that on. It's in the newer versions of FL. So I'm going to quickly gain stage using these clipping tools here. If you do it in the mixer, it's post everything, so it's not really doing much. Let's turn down this sample. Turn up the bass. So I want to prioritize different sounds. For this type of West Coast beat, the snare is usually priority, and then the kick, and then the bass. So that snare is nice and loud. Let's turn up the kick a little bit. Don't worry about levels right now. So these two need to match. These are like part 1 and part 2 of the sample. Okay, so I think the levels are good. Okay, so now we have the levels right. So again, the biggest mistake I see music producers make is they try to level in the mixer, and this is after everything. Okay, so that means you're not really doing much when it comes to compressors and different things. You're gonna have to redo the volume anyway, going into a compressor. So now that we have everything mapped out, let's start grouping things if we need to. I don't think we need to process the drums as a whole for this type of track. The drums already sound hard, and the sample already sounds hard. So we don't really need to group things for this specific beat, because nothing needs to be processed as far as a group sound. So let's start with the mix bus, and then we'll go to the problem areas. So this is almost top-down mixing in a way. So first thing I'm going to do is add a saturator. The point of the saturator, and actually before the saturator, let's go to the K-Clip tool. You could use any clipper tool you like. Fruity Soft Clipper, Standard Clip, T-Rex, Classic Clipper. This is K-Clip by Kazrog. And let's pull down the threshold. All I'm trying to do is just take off some of those ghost transients. You can read the value here that's getting taken out, or clipped, I should say. So if I exaggerate this effect, you'll hear it a little more clearly. I'm going to exaggerate, but I'm not going to push it this hard. The problem with that sound is that it squares off the sound so much that you lose that dynamic. And dynamic is the contrast of the beat. If we take out the contrast, everything looks the same and it's going to feel the same. Okay, so it's so subtle you can't tell, but I'm reading the clip values and I know that we're taking out substantial transients, which is clearing up a lot of headroom for us to run through a lot more processing. So when you guys are gain staging, what it really just means is like, where's the level set input and where's the level set output? And what is the process that happened in between? So right there, we're basically going in one way, coming out a different way. Okay, now we're gonna go into FabFilter Saturn 2. I like it on warm tape. I'm gonna add what's called a modulation envelope, and we're gonna drag it over the mix level. And then I'm gonna mess with the threshold here so that only when that top part of the audio hits will it saturate the sound. This is, again, buying me more headroom and also adding a little grit to the sound. I'll exaggerate so you guys can hear it. Let's turn this up so you can hear it. It's adding that crunchy sound. Okay, so now when I pull up the threshold, it only adds that crunch sound to certain sounds that reach a certain level. Now this is super exaggerated, so let's pull it back. Okay, so if you did want to compress, this would be the area where you would compress. I'm not going to compress on this specific track because I don't think we need compression. Okay, so now we have the group done, taken care of. Now we can go to the individual things and start fixing things. So you got to just listen to sounds and hear if anything's quote unquote wrong. So here, people say don't solo, but sometimes you need to solo to hear frequencies that you wouldn't hear because they're getting masked. So here we have the bass. So the bass, what I want it to do is jump out just a little bit more. We can add some saturation for harmonic excitement. Harmonic excitement basically means we're taking the lower frequencies and creating new frequencies that are higher. And those higher frequencies are a little bit easily heard easily, whatever the grammar is, heard more easily through headphones and speakers because they're in the mid-range. So what we want to do, let's find a saturator plug in here. There's so many that my brain is literally trying to think of which one would be best. Even certain compressors have saturation to them. But what we're going to do, let's go with this one for now. The black box. Usually people use this on the entire track. We're going to turn saturation on. Let's solo using a low pass. And only target everything below about 150 hertz. And then we're going to saturate. I'll exaggerate sound. This adds a little tiny rumble to the sound. Then you could also pull up the sound with the compressor. There's a LA3A. Where is our LA3A? Any compressor, really. We're just kind of keep it stable, but also give it a little vibrancy. Different compressors give you different harmonic results. So we're trying to pick out which sounds in the beat need to stay still and which sounds need to move. If everything's moving, it gets confusing. If everything's still, then there's no contrast. So you have to determine which instruments are going to be your stable instruments that don't move a lot and which instruments are going to be your moving instruments. So I think hi-hats are going to be the main moving element. Also with this bass, I found that boosting up 60 and 70 hertz really translates. So let's go to 60. It just adds that feeling to the bass. Instead of just hearing the bass, you can feel it. So this is one of my favorite frequencies. And now we can feel the bass. All All right, so now the goal is to balance the kick with the bass so that you can hear the kick move without the bass feeling like it's overshadowing the kick. So this is about just turning your faders up and down. So now we have enough contrast or difference between the level of the kick and the bass to where the kick feels like the more dominant element, and now the bass is kind of hanging back. Okay, now let's go to the sample. Let's solo the sample to hear any frequencies we might not like. So notice even with the bass, the sample is not super low end heavy. And that's how a lot of mixes were done back then. They didn't have a bunch of 60 and 30 hertz that we have today. So what I'm going to do, since the sample doesn't really need much touching, we could check the sides. We could check also if we want to push the sample back in the mix a little bit using Waves TrueVerb, or we could simply tilt the frequency of the energy of the frequencies so that it's more top end heavy. But let's see what it sounds like in the mix. So what we would do is, let's say this sample is too bass heavy. Let me show you guys an example. Let's say the sample it started like this, which is a little bass heavy. This will compete against our kick and our bass. Okay, so you would have 3 basses at that point. So what we're going to do is tilt it the other way so that we still hear the bass technically, but it's not the low end frequency of the bass. Now when I boosted this hard, now we're getting a lot of sibilance. So we need to go in and add a de-esser just to tame some of the high end a little bit. So what I like to do is set my range to 2 dB and find the top peak of the audio. Now it takes care of that high end, even though we boosted it. So at this point, I'm just going to check the side image. I don't think there's any frequencies we need to take out. So this is the information, the difference between the left and the right ear. I'm just looking around to see if we need any information or if any information was on the side that we didn't hear. It feels very even, so there's not much to do on the side image. I also like the stereo image, so there's nothing to really change as far as the imaging. Some people overly widen their tracks, and it actually makes it sound confusing and pan to a certain side. So I'm not going to overly widen that sample. It's already wide enough. Let's say you wanted to push it back in the mix. We could add Waves TrueVerb. The way I would use this is I would turn down the reverb level. We don't want to tail to the sound. We just want to create the early reflections. And then I would start low and then start pulling up the early reflection. So now we're pushing the sample back, giving it dimension. And then you can pull up the direct signal. And now our sample feels like it's in a place as opposed to just playing. I'm going to lower it so it's not so exaggerated. But that's how you add dimension, so to speak. Let's do it before and after. You do lose some of that impact of that bass. So there's definitely a trade-off to this. All right, so I think I found a nice sweet balance there. Let's open up the instrument. I would like some movement with the hi-hats. There's a plugin called Pan Man by Soundtoys. Let's load this up. And what I'm going to do is set it to a rhythmic movement. So let's set it to a rhythmic step. So it's going to go left, center, right, center. We're just going to pull in the width. So now the hi-hats are moving around. Now you notice when you start soloing, so a lot of you guys hear advice not to solo. That's only partially true. I understand why people say it. It's so you don't like solo a mix and then everything doesn't blend at the end. But here, the reason we had the solo is because now we're hearing frequencies we didn't hear in the context of the entire beat. And some of these frequencies can be messing up the other frequencies of the beat. So this has a lot of low end in this hi-hat. Now we do want some of the mids because that gives it its character, but we don't need the low frequencies below, let's say 80 hertz. There was a whole kick in this sample. So let's see how much we could take out without losing the character. So right about 200, you start to lose that character of the hi-hat. So 150, let's do it before and after. Here's before. Here's after. So you wouldn't even notice that kick. But that small little sub frequency could have been messing with the kick and the bass. Now let's say you don't have these plugins. I'm actually building what's called the Sounds Vault, and I've built some actual plugins for you that are FL Studio plugins, but basically it's a customized plugin. And where is it at here? Let's find it. So in the Sounds Vault, we have the first pack, and it's going to be called Neon Lights. If you go to the presets, go to Mixer Presets, under the patcher, you can actually drag in presets for your beat. So if you can't afford these plugins, I know it costs hundreds of dollars. What I've done is added these, which are FL Studio compatible using stock plugins, so you don't need any third-party plugins. Let me just show you guys what these sound like. So I'm going to load up all 1, 2, 3, 4 of them for the beat. And then we'll go through each one quickly. So I have one for mastering even. I have one for widening your beat. So let me get into all these ones real quick. So again, this is coming out pretty soon. It's going to be at busyworksbeats.com/sounds whenever it's ready. Okay, so the first one's called Beat Enhancer. Let's take off any limiting after for now. And we need the clipping just because of the level. Okay, so here's the Beat Enhancer. Now, let's turn this off. So all we have to do is just adjust the input level. What we would do in this case is pull up a parametric EQ2 or Fruity Balance, either one. Go to the left side, let's pull down your level. So we're not clipping. It doesn't really matter because we're gonna run into a soft clipper and a limiter anyway, but. So here's before. Here's after. That's just the beat enhancer, just adds an extra little touch for your beat. The next one's called Beat Gooderizer. Now this one adds that knock to your beat, so let's pull this up a little bit. Here's before. Here's after. Get that snare popping through. Okay, so Beat Masterizer is meant to actually control the levels. So this one's gonna make it loud. Now again, you can adjust the input volume. If you actually go inside the plugin, we have the input gain. Let me turn this down. One of my favorites though is this with knob. Just turn this up and then mess with the range. It adds a nice image to your beat. It's like now you can feel the beat almost like it's like 3D. Here's before. Here's after. So I have those plugins coming for you soon. They're going to be at busyworksbeats.com/sounds in what's called the Sounds Vault. All right, so I've just thought about those for the people who can't afford these $100, $200 plugins. They're pretty much done this beat as far as mixing it. So all I want to do is think about how to excite the sound at this point. At this point, we're just thinking brighter frequencies, width to the track. Okay, so let's add an EQ to boost up some of these higher frequencies. Okay, so now we're just trying to limit it and compress it. Let me add my limiter back. Now, sometimes I can tell when I'm overly pushing into a limiter, so that's why gain staging is about the volume going into a plugin and the volume coming out. So on the EQ, I'm actually turning down the output. Now let's mess with the imaging. The reason we usually pull bass mono and this stuff wider, the higher frequencies wider, is because when you pull stuff mono, both speakers are producing the signal. So it hits twice as heavy, basically. And as far as the other information that we're spreading up top, we're creating a contrast because now you have super wide mids to highs and then a super narrow bass, and it creates that difference, that contrast. You don't always need to pull your bass in mono. We usually target anything below 80 hertz because that's where sub frequencies are. And you can't really tell where those are panned anyway. So you could just pull those mono. But everything else, like above 80, like the knock of your bass or that like Reese sound, you could make that stereo. Let's A-B our mix so far. Here's before. Here's before. Just sounds like straight linear and doesn't really have a body to it. Sounds hollow almost. Let's start turning on these plugins. Let's A-B the mix chain real quick. Hear how bright that snare is? I turned up my volume so I could hear like the loud stuff. That snare is bright without this. There are some frequencies that when you turn this up louder, they get a little more enhanced. So what we could do is add a final de-esser just to take care of any frequencies that may be overwhelming. I like to put it to 2 dB and move the threshold based on the peak of the audio. Let's listen to the beat. And we could push this beat a lot louder. I just don't like my beats super loud. I just don't think that makes it sound any better. So that's how you mix beats. This is a sample beat specifically for hip hop. If you want to learn more, we have a course called the Mixing Fundamentals. Just go to busyworksbeats.com/premium to sign up for free today. Mixing Fundamentals really goes over the core fundamentals like compression, EQ, saturation, clipping, making stuff louder, wider, okay? And we're going to be coming out with the Sounds Vault soon. It's going to be at busyworksbeats.com/sounds. Thank you guys for watching. It's Game from busyworksbeats.com. Peace.